All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here and welcome to today's webinar, which is, as we see here, the lowdown on courses. And by that, I do mean, ways and means of using courses, and especially even if you don't offer courses as part of your coaching program. To me, it's really important to mention that first because I think it's very kind of tragic if you kind of blithely assume like, oh, well, I don't do coaching courses. Let me just turn that off and never explore it. The reason for that is, well, frankly, there's a problem with the name courses. It's just way too specific and doesn't do justice to all that they can do. Now, what I have here right below that, what they might be called is a general purpose automated content delivery system. That's a mouthful. That's disgusting. It's a terrible name. Unfortunately, even despite its disgustingness and its wordiness and how many syllables are packed into that, that really gets more to the heart of what courses are capable of. That's a little abstract though. So we're going to look into a little more of the broader sort of, or shall we say, use cases and specific instances that sort of general purpose system can be leveraged to use. So we could call it, by any other name, it would be just as handy, but had to pick one that was catchy, but it covers a lot of ground. The first case, which is I think what most people associate when they hear the word courses, that's the stuff of programs. Well, I've got a 6-week program, and in week 1, we've got these materials and assignments, and in week 2, we start tracking this thing, and in week 3, I have you watch this video and do this assignment, and so on. Like that sort of prescriptive schedule of a program, and that is sort of what I think most people think of when they think of course. And there's a lot of coaches who just don't do that, who just don't have that level of formality or codified or pre-canned material, because so much of coaching is tailored to the individual, of course. And so you might blithely skip over and think like, well, courses aren't for me because I don't do that kind of thing. But there's a lot of others, and we're going to do sort of a quick survey on what other kinds of things you can do with courses that, sort of the broad strokes, some overlap, some don't, of kinds of things that, again, this general purpose tool of automation can provide for you. The more minified version of it that's one step down from programs, what I would call little modules. You might not have full-blown programs, but you might invent little, bite-sized nuggets of exercises or activities that you might have sort of on the shelf as something, and you can play like the doctor who's prescribing based on a conversation like, based on what you talked about, I'd like you to work on this. You might be a career and life coach. You might have a little module on like, I'd like you to work on this little piece about the imposter syndrome, to learn about it, to work through it, to do some things. Or I'd like you to make a little exercise of taking a week to adopt and try on a meditation habit. And maybe there's some materials and practices that they're mini modules that can be little bite-sized lessons that you can, again, codify, have templated out, but it's something that you more in an ad hoc fashion would recommend or give to your people. And again, that tool of automation that a course is allows you to do all the work of getting it really right, really perfect, really well crafted in ways that you may not be able to do practically on a per person basis, per situation basis, but you can do it one time and then again have it on the shelf to pull off for people as needed. So that's another sort of idea for what courses could or should maybe be named as modules. Another one is templates. You might have a coaching program where you're clear. Everyone you work with, or maybe most of all people you work with, you're always going to be tracking the same 6 metrics, the same 6 KPIs that are going to come up over and over again. And it could be a real slog to try and set those 6 up every single time when that's just it. That's what it's like to start working with me. So you can make a template of 1 or more metrics or other things, or maybe a set of files that are always going to be the things that you share either when right out the gate or after they've been working with for a month. You can template out these things so that you can set up the same old with just a few clicks for people on a rolling basis. Another use case, which is easy to recognize but easy to also miss as a courses thing, email drips. A lot of softwares have email campaign drip set things so that, on day 1 you get this email, on day 7 you get this email, on day 24 you get that email, and so on. Or even a subscriber thing where you just schedule out to a newsletter collection of folks, hey, everyone's going to get this message on this date, and a couple of days later I'm going to send out that message, and you might sort of write them as you go, but just have them locked and noted and ready to go as per the schedule. So an email drip system is another sort of thing that you can do as a Coach Accountable course. Next one is what we call in Coach Accountable land a starter kit. Going back to a bit of more of the template thing, a more specific thing is maybe when someone starts working with you, you've always got the same sequence of things happen. We always share with them these 3 files, give them this welcome message. On day 2, we'll give them the follow-up welcome message and maybe let them know, hey, please take some time to schedule your first appointment, and maybe an intake worksheet form, things like that. Any number of these, again, building blocks that are standard to courses can be codified into this sort of little ritual. And again, that becomes your, this is what it takes to set up a person. Again, this is now quite divorced from the idea of having a 6-month program, some grand coaching program. You just know how you roll. You know, before you even talk to someone, because you haven't talked to them, you've always got a certain set of procedures and steps and things to set in motion. That's a starter kit. That's a perfect other use case for courses. Another one is a general purpose item scheduler. When you're working with someone, you might have a great call with someone, but you don't want to overwhelm them, but you've got an idea of like 6 or 7 things that they should watch or read up on, or a little assignment you'd like them to noodle on between the next time you talk in a month or 2 weeks or a week. You can use courses as a way to generally set things in motion to be sent to them when the time is right. So if you have a conversation with someone on Tuesday, you might say, let me send them a follow-up email on Thursday with just a sort of refresher or reminder of like, hey, don't forget these key points. I hope you're having a great week. Give me a call if you need anything. And maybe over the weekend, you'd like to assign them a little video like, hey, I thought of you and this video would be great for you to watch. Any of these little things that you might want to sort of basically send to your client, but maybe not right now, but just set it in the future so that it's ready to go to them there. So again, you can stagger things out. General purpose item scheduler, another thing for a course. Now we're really far removed from the idea of a big course and instead a really general purpose tool of putting things out in the future. And then the final one that I have listed here is a stepwise interactive wizard. You might truly design something that's like a series of, again, a little exercise or activity that you complete one thing and then you get the next step, and then you complete that thing, and then maybe you get to watch a video and you watch the video, and then you get a little worksheet to noodle on, and then you complete that worksheet, and then you get 2 action items to do and you mark those complete, and then the sequence is over and you say, hey, great work, way to work through that thing, or set up that thing, or get set for this other whatever. That's all. And therefore you've got this sort of, again, this interactive stepwise process that you can put people through. Again, you design it one time, you set it in motion with just a few clicks, and then you're creating these little experiences by which people can go through an experience of going through your coaching material, distinctions, wisdom, and all that in automated fashion. That's interactive. So we've got a lot of names that courses really could answer to, and it's both unfortunate and fortunate that I converged on one of them. Again, there's a problem with courses because if left to your own imagination, most people will gloss over the true potential that they have and maybe dismiss them outright. And so I'm glad for you, everyone on the line and everyone watching this recording. Thanks for watching this long, because now you know that this might apply to you in ways that you might not have thought when we first started. So in covering courses, we have just a couple of broad strokes to cover. I'm going to go over some of the core ideas. I almost didn't include this because I often forget how maybe not intuitive the whole idea of what courses are as a general purpose scheduling engine are. So I'm going to go over those and sort of make it clear. And I would appreciate anyone who's on the line to just chime in if I haven't covered anything, or if there's any sort of misconceptions or hey, what does this mean as we go there. We'll distinguish the core ideas of courses. Then we'll go into some of those examples of those varied use cases that I went through. I just covered them, just me talking in the abstract. We'll look at existing courses and building some other courses on the fly that really touch to how to design courses for those varied use cases. Then we'll go into the building of courses themselves. Again, this is sort of going to overlap. This isn't quite a linear talk here, but we'll actually look at the nuts and bolts of what it is to create a course, the dragging and dropping, the making following items, the cloning items, etc., so that you can, with confidence, take to the course timeline builder and design these programs quickly and efficiently. And then we're going to go into managing participations, which is a little bit of a weird word. Notice I say managing participations, not participants. Participants are the clients or the coaching groups that you put into a course. Their participations is, well, what is the state of their participating in the course? You know, things of starting them on day one or pausing their participation or scheduling out in the future, or fast forwarding, rewinding. These are some of the nuts and bolts, again, of actually administering and using these courses that can get you tripped up, and with a little bit of understanding of the underlying concepts, they can become quickly clear. And then throughout, we're going to have a bunch of other key concepts sprinkled. There's a lot of ins and outs and features and switches that are easy to gloss over and look, but I'll be linking them back to, again, some of the key concepts, the basic metaphors, so that as you go through the system and use these and build these, you'll understand how to, you know, effectively, you know, wield all that the system is capable of, as well as recognize for yourself how to deal with a given scenario. Things like, hey, I've got a course that's already in motion, someone's starting 2 days late, how do I get them in but have them synced with the rest of the group? Things like that. So let's get into it with the gist of courses. This has been implied and sort of talked around in everything that I've said so far, but again, I think it just bears me not sort of glossing over and assuming that everyone knows what courses are, and instead just give the real premise. Courses are your way of creating a timeline or a template, or you might say a formula, or you might say a sort of blueprint of what should happen with clients as they go through, participants as they go through this program. And by happening, I mean the dispatching of items. Items are set to dispatch automatically on your behalf per the rules that you set, either on a timeline or, hey, when they complete step 1, they now get step 2. It's basically, you know, building timelines and schedules of those items, where the items are from the course builder, things like actions, metrics, worksheets, and so on. Those are your building blocks, and you create them and sprinkle them all on a timeline, and that becomes, again, this sort of model of what will go out and when to the people who are going through your programs. Anything not clear about that premise right off the bat? Good so far? All right. I'm gonna have to make my own water drinking breaks. It's all good. Moving on to then to past the gist of courses. There's 2 flavors of courses. Like I said, like I alluded to, we've got time-based and we've got self-paced. And time-based means that your timeline of building the course, it shows days, as you can see here, like day 1 and day 2 and day 3. And all these items have specific times, moments and times that you can say, like, hey, at 10:30, I want this email to be sent out to someone who's on day 1. You can also see, well, what day of the year on the calendar, where would that fit? This is an opportunity for some confusion, because this is as if the course started on Friday, July 26th. But if someone started on Saturday, then all these dates would line up differently relative to the days. So you just want to basically bear in mind that you're creating something that's an abstract day 1, day 2, day 3, and it does map onto the calendar, but not necessarily, because people can start at any time, and you can create a course and reuse it again and again so that people can join it at any time. So the dates, while absolute, can be nice as a pointer when you're designing it to recognize, okay, well, maybe I don't want to send things on the weekends, and maybe I want to emphasize certain things on Mondays. You have to then be responsible that you start someone on the right day relative to what the course timeline expects. And then for contrast, we can see self-paced courses, which really have nothing to do with time so much as progress. Instead of days, they're units. So we've got the same items, and then unit 1, unit 2, unit 3, unit 4. And we don't say anything about the time, because it's all in when it starts. And when does the client get moved on? When does the participant move on? We couldn't predict that as days and times on the calendar, because it depends on them. Once they read this email, actually emails automatically go on, they get step 2, and once they mark that complete, then they get step 3. When does it happen? Who knows? It could be right away, or it could be 3 months from now. If it's 3 months, you might want to check in on them. But that's the idea. Those 2 flavors allow you to sort of give a little bit of variety in what's most appropriate for the delivery of your things. We'll focus mostly on time-based, but self-paced, also known as unit-based, allows a sort of, well, like I said, people can go through the program at their own pace, which can be very appropriate for certain types of programs. Okay, so one thing I'd like to introduce now is a subtle but key concept when we're talking about courses. Again, part of what I want to do here is, give you the underlying mental models so that confusion doesn't arise in the first place. The map is not the terrain, and the blueprint is not the house. These courses, as you will be building them, as you'll be designing them, are just, like I said, they're templates, they're maps, they're blueprints. They are a description of what should happen, and they are not the actual what did happen. So a great way to illustrate this is, say you've got a course and 20 people are in the course, and on day 4, a metric's going to go out. And it goes out, and you realize there's a typo in that. And then you change it on the course, the typo, and then the metric is still wrong. It still has that typo for the individual clients who just got it assigned to them. Well, what's happening is you're changing the blueprint, but that part of the house has already been built. So you can't really expect that the changes to that model of what should go out will affect things that have already gone out. So recognizing that when we're building courses, we're building a blueprint, we're building a template, and that's distinct from what actually goes out. Will allow you to avoid a lot of confusion, and I'll always be able to know that when you're making edits to the course, that's for both future participants who will be going through it, as well as, that might be parts of the future of the course that are yet to be gotten to by people who are going through the course. It's a bit of a mouthful, but hopefully that lands. All right, so let's get into it. We're gonna now kind of look at some courses and building of them. Any questions before we go, now that we're done with this sort of intellectual heady stuff about it all? All right, I'd say we're good. Here's a course that I've created, which is, this might be most typical of the program kind of course. Maybe you've got a course that's designed to run over a couple of weeks and you just add items to it. Here are your course builder tools. Like it says here, drag these items to the timeline. Here are those aforementioned building blocks of a course that allows you to sort of mix and match and sprinkle these on the timeline. We've got our timeline, our number of days, and we can just drag things on. Say we want to have another action item that should go out on day 7. Take a breath, and we can set a due date. And remember, because this is in the abstract, we don't actually have the date picker. We just say relative to when this was dispatched, it's going to be due several days later at a certain time. So assign it at maybe 8:30 and give people 1 day to do it. And let's do it 5. Like making a regular action, you can set reminders in motion, meaning that when someone gets this action, reminders will be set in motion relative to whenever they got the action item. And similarly, we can send notifications of action items or any other items that the system will send. This is a default template that is just there. You can customize it however you like. You've got these you've got these magic tags. This is fine. I guess you probably don't want to watch me do too much typing here. But what's nice is to mark it complete, please log in. The login link is a magic link that allows them to just click and go right into their account, which reduces any friction to them actually participating and doing the work of your programs. So that's always nice to handle. It's a sort of courtesy to your clients to add that. And then maybe in this message, you say something, rather wise, So maybe this isn't just a regular notification. Maybe this is actually a lesson in and of itself where this content is good and probably should be easily referenced later. We can click this little checkbox, add this notification message to the client stream in addition to sending via email. Therefore, it becomes part of that, they can always find it as, things that were done. So the more pedestrian, hey, this is just a little heads up, may not be worth the record, but sometimes it is. We can also make items that follow other items. So any questions about this? I feel like I'm glossing over a big part, but dragging and dropping onto the course timeline to add items. Good so far? Not an agreement? Yeah, all right, good. And one thing that is easy to miss is the idea of following items. So actions, worksheets, and files are kind of special in that they have the concept of being completable. You can mark an action complete. You can finish a worksheet. You can actually access a file and the system knows, hey, you just accessed that file. So these 3 items have this notion of like, well, that's now done. And in building courses, you can say, hey, when something's done, I'd like you to send out the next thing because we're doing a stepwise progression. And so I can put any sort of item to follow the completion of an item. And if that's shown here by, if I drag over, add a new metric to follow the completion of this worksheet. And that's kind of cool. You can then just design a metric here. And again, you're putting things in abstract terms. It's not an actual date picker, but you just pick the duration. And whenever it starts, that's when it'll go for 30 more days beyond that, for example. But that's the idea of creating a follows item. You can also precede items. Items that are followable can then say, like, wait a second, before this item happens, I want them to have this step, maybe an action item. And so again, if I drag onto the day, I add it right to the day, and I can choose what time of the day it should be. If I drag it towards the bottom of a followable item, a completable item, I can add it to follow the completion. And because this is, again, one of those special types of items that are completable, a completable item can be dragged towards the top of an item, and it says, precede this worksheet with a new action. And that makes sense because an action can be completed. It's one of those 3 magic types. And therefore we can say, okay, once it's completed, this worksheet that already existed will be the thing that follows.
So John, just so I'm clear, if I want to follow an item, I have to put it below the item?
It's all about where the drag target shows. So this little dotted blue place says, like, as you drag it, where's it going to go? So when I drag it right onto the day, anywhere on the item for the most part that verbiage shows is the following thing.
Okay, and I don't have to indicate inside of the action or the action that is following. I don't have to indicate anything.
No, it's just a matter of how you build them creates this little daisy chain effect. So I could make another action here. And in fact, I could have multiple items that get dispatched as following the completion of items, so that when this worksheet is completed, an action and a metric will be set in motion, for example. So you can make whatever kind of fun things you want in terms of these interactive sequences.
So if I want them to follow or be followed, I link it to that action. If I don't, I just keep it disconnected, just put it outside of that action.
Correct. So putting it outside of the action gives us, again, that ability to put it right on the day. And then on the day, we can say, you know, what time of the day should it happen?
Right. Okay, cool.
And I've mentioned this at a previous webinar, I think, but adding a metric to follow something else, just be careful if you're doing that, because if they never complete the first thing, that metric does not get set in action, or anything that's a following item. They need to do that first thing before the next thing will happen. So sometimes people will say, they never got the metric and it's on day 3 and, you know, whatever, but they didn't do what was supposed to cause the metric to go and be started. So if you want that metric to start on a particular day at a particular time, make sure that it's not linked up with anything else.
Yeah, that's a good point. Non-essential to the program items, maybe don't make them contingent upon a particular completion. What Morgan's talking about is a very common pattern where you've got a daily check-in worksheet. And maybe the answers to that worksheet are basically what fills in various metrics, so that the active filling out the worksheet basically populates, you know, what's your charts for various KPIs that you're working on. Yeah, we had a pattern where we realized, like, oh, it's really slick if on day 1 they complete the metric and, okay, we're going to track these things. And then when someone doesn't get their act together on day 2, then the whole thing derails and it just doesn't work. Okay, so let's see, that's following items. Any questions about that?
Hi, John, this is Romo. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, Romo? I can.
Yes,
Okay.
I am.
Yeah.
I've got a question. I'm using the daily check-ins. So could you explain it a little bit more, because I didn't get what you were talking about.
Sure. Let's hop out of here. One of the things that I have is, let's see here. What's a good one? Oh yeah, let's go to that. Let's jump ahead to standard metrics. We have a course that one of the ideas that I said earlier was templates. And again, if you do the same 3, in this case, metrics every single time, you can save yourself some clicks by just making it a single course, a 1-dayer, so it's just 1 day, and all 3 dispatch. But then, to your point, Sho, if you want to have that be, well, let's make it easy for them to actually track those metrics. Let's send them a daily worksheet that will prompt those things. That's that idea of a worksheet that captures that. So I've designed one. This is sort of outside the scope of this course, but I've designed a worksheet. We'll just throw it on to day 1. And it's the desirable habits check-in. And we can keep it linked or not. Let's just, I'm going to click this to show it. We're not going to actually make edits to it, but we're going to just show. So please take 2 minutes to take stock of your day. Time spent meditating. Comment. Civilized hours worked. Comment. Did you get any exercise? Yes or no? Comment. Great job. Keep it up. Simple worksheet. And I've rigged things under the hood so that they'll pipe in. So this, you know, I give it a name, and then actually let's make this work. Let me relink this. Keep that there. It's assigned first thing in the morning. Do the same day. Yeah, maybe 1 day later. And we'll send a reminder maybe 1 hour later. Hopefully they'll get into a habit where they don't need that reminder, so that if they complete it beforehand, good. Send a notification. Okay. We'll not add it to the stream because it's a pretty pedestrian message. I'll overwhelm that. I'll just put it in. Okay, so that check-in form comes in, and what was it? The exercise. We'll make this work metric pipe into that, so that the answer to that question up there will be picked up by us, piped in on any exercise metric here. That's great. And now we want this to go out every day because this is a daily habit. So we've got a 1-day course. Let's go over to basics. Let's call it a 6-week program, 42 days. And now let's clone it down the line. So we've got our metrics. And we'll take this item here and click this little clone icon. And we want to place it 1 day later. So we want this to happen again tomorrow, the next day in the timeline. But we want it to happen every day. So let's do this cloning multiple times. And we'll perform it, I guess, 41 times down the line. We could skip weekends, but actually these habits are good week round. So we'll do that and then we'll just go. So we can just see the course filling up with that worksheet every time. And that's handy. And now we're all done. So now we've created a course timeline to your earlier question of having a single worksheet that gets sent out automatically every day, and the filling out of which will have these metrics be populated.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions about that? Good. All right. There's one fun thing. Say we made a mistake and we don't want it to go out at 8 a.m. We want it to go out at 9:30 maybe. I could edit this, be like, okay. And then I realized, oh God, I just cloned it down the line and I have to change every single one of these, and this is real slog. But there's a better way. Easy come, easy go. We're gonna instead just delete this one. And then the system says, hey, there are a lot of other items just like it. You want us to delete these as well? That'd be great. So they're all gone now. And then that's why I said easy come, easy go. Now we'll just take this one where we've made our edits to it, 9:30 instead of 8. And we'll again redo the cloning. Not perfect, just as we wanted to. And then we're back in business with that change that we wanted to affect happening on all 42 days, going through all 42 days. Jennifer, that's a great question about how people will fill in the worksheet. That goes back to that notification message. Dear client, it's time to do your thing. Do so, click here to get going. That comes to their email. They click this, and this is the effect of one, magically logging them in so they don't have to fart around like, what was my login? I don't care anymore. It magically logs them in, and it brings the worksheet right up, bam, right front and center on smartphone, tablet, whatever device, and then they can just get cracking, type in those 3 numbers, hit submit, and they're off to the races.
Okay, but this is Jennifer. Do I have it correct that for individual metrics, when people get an email, they can just respond to the email and the data goes into the metric? Is that right? That
is correct. And that's awesome when you do that for just having a couple of daily metrics. I would say 2, 3 at the most. Okay. When you have a lot, that's when there's a certain luxury in making a nice, tidy worksheet that makes it a one-step process versus answering emails.
I got it. Thank you.
Cool. Let's check out another course, another kind of thing. Here's an example of a nice little module where it's like, well, maybe for 30 days, I want you to have a weekly practice of taking stock of important things. So I kind of designed a simple course that encapsulates that. Here we got a course where there's an action item that goes out and it says, take a little time to work on your big picture reflections whiteboard. And at the same time, a whiteboard is set in motion. And you can click here and see the whole thing. And like I said here, I just kind of make a little example. I mean, your coaching style, your coaching material will of course be your own, but this is just an idea of one thing you can do so we can see a pattern. I make a whiteboard, and again, whiteboards are great for constantly evolving documents that can be edited by coach or client at any time, and the record of drafts is maintained. So I think it's kind of a cool thing. Maybe reflect on big picture. On the first day, we'll put this in, and hey, client, take a little time and write about these things. And then we have a little following item. See, this little arrow means when they complete this, when they mark this action item complete, it says great, and a little quick message about it. And then I said again for this mini module, you can see on the calendar, we've got on day 8, the next Friday, there's another action item where it's just like, hey, take a little time to review and update. And I have a little message here that says, great, we'll do it again soon, and so on. I just did a little bit of cloning, and I think on the third one, by the third one, I made a little separate thing. And I just kind of give them a little Easter eggy hint, like, hey, now that you've been doing this practice for a while, check back. It's not a big deal. It's just sort of a little bit of a way to tee someone up for an exercise, and not quite self-coaching, but doing work that you don't have to necessarily prompt. Rather, you can kind of set in motion, and that can be their own valuable exercise. And it gives you guys things to talk about and reflect on during your sessions. So this is an example of a little module that automates a lot of these things. Let's look at some of the gotchas here. As you can see, I kind of programmed it to be like, hey, we want this to be on Fridays. Maybe as a practice, as coach, I prescribe like, this would be great if you do it on Fridays. But remember, these timeline dates are only as if the course started on a particular day. If I started someone on a Monday, well, then day 1 is Monday, and then all the day 8, day 8, the next week is Monday, and so on. So there's a certain responsibility that you have to have in terms of keeping clear when you start someone in a given course and where that lines up on the calendar with respect to weekends and weekdays. There's a little bit of power and flexibility. Maybe someone wants to like, yeah, Wednesday's my catch-up day, coach. Great, let me give you this exercise and have it trigger on Wednesdays so that I'll schedule your participation to happen on a Wednesday so that these all fire out on Wednesdays. So that's an example of a mini module. And again, what I did was, drag an action item on and drag a message to follow it on, and then I cloned it down the line, and then I made some customizations in the messaging that gets sent out for some of the things. There's something magical about, yes, you can use the clone tool to design out courses really fast, but if you want to do a nice extra value add, you can take a little time and actually do some customization and tweaks to make it so that your clients don't filter it out as like, oh yeah, this is a template email, it always says this. But rather instead train them like, oh yeah, any emails that come from my coach are valuable and full of different little nuggets of wisdom. They're worth paying attention to versus having the signal fade as just a repeated thing that falls into the background. Any questions on this one, this example?
John, I was trying to think, I don't know if I can even formulate the question, but as far as shifting those days around, like I start groups, I do have a year program, and I start on, some of them I start on a Wednesday, some I start on a Thursday. Is there any way to adjust without going through trying to adjust the whole, what is it called, the course? Is there any way to adjust the dates that you're starting? Because you got a 7-day week, but maybe I'm starting on a Wednesday, but the next person I'm starting on a Thursday, but I want to move everything a little differently.
Right on. So we show the timeline as if this course started, but remember, the blueprint is not the house. This is the map, it's not the terrain. So let's look at this. Let's kind of jump into my next sort of big bullet to cover, which is bullet to cover the managing of participants. So say we got this project, this weekly reflection thing, and it's sort of rigged to happen on Fridays, but let's put a person into the course. So participant, let's add right there. And the assigning coach will be me. And we're going to begin on. So that show as if date now has no power whatsoever. We know that on day 1 and then day 8 and then day 15, that's when the exercise goes out. So I could set someone on to begin. We're scheduling their participation on a Tuesday, which means day 1's on a Tuesday. So that exercise is on a Tuesday, and the subsequent weekly exercises are all falling on Tuesdays. Maybe they prefer to do Thursdays. Great, I'll start this starting for you on August 1st, which is a Thursday, meaning all those days of when the prompt to reflect come on Thursdays. Does that make sense? That's one gotcha. You know, in the course builder, we see that you can that those days are where they are. Like, oh, well, this is happening on a Wednesday. This is happening on another Wednesday, July 31st. But that's only as if the course started on. In reality, we can have it start on whatever day we want. Take these dates with a grain of salt. They're just for planning purposes. Like I said, they're really nice to sort of work around weekends, what days are weekends and weekdays. And they can be sometimes nice to see, like, oh, that's a 3-day weekend, that's Labor Day. Maybe I don't want to schedule anything there. But again, you have to make sure if you're doing that sort of giving it those dates that kind of credence, then you have to be responsible that everyone's participation starts on that same day so that it all lines up. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Here's another, let's take another angle, and thanks, Jerry, for that question. Here's another angle of that sort of timing element that we want to do. Like I said, the drip message sequence. We could envision a course that is a sequence of messages that are scheduled to go out on actual days of the month, and everyone who I'm coaching will be a participant in this course, meaning they're going to get these scheduled things. So I set this one to be on, you know, starting Monday, and then, oh yeah, on a Friday, day 5. Well, that turns out to be today. Maybe just a little note for everyone, you know, hey, maybe I've got one of my themes as a career coach and a work performance coach. Keep these in mind. General purpose message applies to everyone. Just a little love note, a little extra value that I can give to my clients. A little, I'm thinking about you and I'm giving you some things to think about to map the things I'm working with you on onto your life to get benefit out of it. And then some other day I might, you know, just on a Monday, hey, it's a Monday, so maybe this is an appropriate thing to schedule out for everyone to receive on a Monday. And again, maybe just a little, you know, a thoughtful message. I can take an afternoon just crafting a bunch of these and then just have these be ready to go. And then maybe midweek I could set another thing and, you know, it's just a little thought. And maybe later on I could see like, oh yeah, this is Labor Day and I want to encourage my clients, because again, I'm all about life balance and work balance. Hey, it's Labor Day. I hope you're not on your email. Please close your email if you are, and have fun, and we'll see you later. This is the stuff of, I'm now actually scheduling things really intentionally to land on this. When someone's on day 43 of their participation, that day 43 should happen on Monday, September 2nd. Otherwise it won't make sense. So let's see how we would do this. Say I've got a new client and I want them to be on my sort of my drip message sequence, the subscribe to things that are just going to be scheduled out and will drip to people as we go. Let's add a participant and let's add a client. Let's again put on someone. And this is, oh, here, I'll just allude to this right now because it's here. If you're on Team Edition and you're scheduling a course participation, well, the coach that is the one who's assigning the course is who it's going to appear from. This course in particular has all these emails. Who are they coming from? Well, they're coming from the assigning coach. Similarly, if it had action items, the assigning coach would be the one who says, like, I've assigned this to you, so I get notified when it becomes late or when it's done and that sort of thing. So we get to say who's the assigning coach in Team Edition, which is an important thing to keep straight so that, you know, everyone's experience makes sense in terms of the messaging is coming from the right person and the interactions with the right coach. So now we're going to begin this course. Remember what I said about this course is designed to start on July 22nd. So it's July 26th right now. So we need to get them in on day 4 in order to be current. They're coming in late. So we can click this little thing called start at some point other than day 1. So we're going to start them right now. We're going to start them today, but we want them to start it on day 4. What that means is they'll be on day 4 as of today, which means they're going to be in sync with all the things, and it'll work as my little scheduler for these messages to drip them emails, drip everyone emails as they go. And we'll keep it invisible because we don't really want to see anyone know that they're in a thing like that. And yes, we will dispatch any items that would have gone out today. If they're a little late, sure, they can get today's email. And we schedule the course. And if we go here, we can see that, you know, here's where he's at. It's on day 4, and it's great. If we wanted to click over and view the state of things, 2 messages have been sent. And, oh wait, that's good. Sorry. Yeah. So we're on day 4. Cool, you're in the email sequence and good to go. Another email will come out eventually. Any questions on that one?
I have a question, not so much about that, but if I, like say most of my course, I'm probably doing in 2-week to maybe 2-month blocks at the most. And if something should happen, maybe I get behind in one of the trainings because it's a group thing as well. And maybe I get behind and we're gonna catch up next week because I didn't really get everything finished. Can I pause any of this?
Yeah. So when you go to manage the participation of a course, you've got a number of controls. One of them is pause.
Oh, okay.
Pause it indefinitely, or you can schedule it to resume at a future date.
Okay. Cool.
As it says here, pausing this course prevents further ones from being delivered as long as it's paused.
You've thought of everything, huh?
A lot of things. Actually, to be honest, many coaches, much like you, who have asked similar questions, much like you just did, have thought of those things. And I said, hey, that's a good idea. Let me add that. So yeah, in that same theme, you can rewind a course. Maybe, you know, they got a little behind or ahead and you want to just rewind and have them redo several days. You can delete any course items from that day, or you can have them stay. Having them stay is useful if you're making edits to the course timeline itself. Deleting means clean slate. Let's just have them all redispatch. Similarly, you can fast forward someone and just kind of have them jump ahead on the timeline. And then you can either skip over, which might be a good idea, or maybe it's important for them to get all the assignments and hopefully they'll not get too much of a backlog of stuff if you rewind it, if you fast forward them 20 days. You can choose to whether or not to send the notification for items that are issued over that time. I want to say a little bit about the sort of, with great power comes great responsibility with these controls. You know, you can, again, rewind the timeline and fast forward. There's a couple of underlying principles that you want to keep in mind. One is non-duplication of items. So if someone's on day 5, they've already got a couple items beforehand, and you rewind them so they can redo it. If you don't delete the items, they won't get them again because the system never wants to give someone the same course item twice. That also pertains to one of the more powerful, but again, sort of can be confusing and dangerous items, which is you can edit courses as you go. When someone is on day 5 of a program and you've got a 6-month program and you're only making it up as you go, that's fine because it's a lovely way to sort of do a real test with a person, and the aftermath is you've got this nice little template that you could then reuse again for someone. When they're on day 5, if you add things to day 6, great, they're going to get it tomorrow. If you add things to day 4, they're not going to see it because they're already done with day 4. So it's like the analogy I use is it's a very slow moving train, and you can lay down tracks, and so long as you keep ahead of the train, it'll just work as you expect. So that allows you to, again, kind of make it up as you go, but then have a nice little track laid out, which is a template for later. You can also be assured that when you, again, are mucking around with the track that is past where the train has already left, any changes you make to the track behind the train doesn't care. It's not going to ride over those portions of the track. So feel free. It's just edits that you're making to benefit previous days. And then the final piece, again, going back to that non-duplication where things get a little weird, if someone got an action assignment to drink a gallon of water on day 4 and they're now on day 5, if you slide that action item to day 6, they won't get it again because the system knows, hey, you already got this on day 4. But if you delete that item and then create a new on day 6, that'll count as a new item. So you're messing with time, and it can be very powerful and it can be very flexible. Just be aware of, the underlying principles, non-duplication, and laying down tracks in front of a train and behind a train are going to sort of govern what they will or will not see as you make those edits in real time. Who's confused at all? Anyone? It's got to be, because that was super word salad what I just said. That one? All right. I'm going to trust you guys on that. I guess I've given this talk enough times that maybe we're good.
The one I didn't fully follow is the deletion part where you talked about where it's not going to duplicate. I don't think I understand that situation real clear.
Yeah. So you create course items, and people have them dispatched as they reach that appropriate point of the course, right? If you've had a given course item dispatched to you, you'll never get it again during the life of your being a participant in that course. So even though you as coach, as designer of the course timeline, can mess around and slide things relative to where a participant is, if they've already gotten the item, they're not going to re-get it. Even if, again, you have it on day 4 and they get to day 4 and bing, they get it. And then you slide it ahead to day 6 and they get to day 6. System will be like, oh, you already got this one, so I'm not going to dispatch it. That's that non-duplication. Oh, you're muted, Jay.
If you did want them to get it again, you said something about deleting it, I believe.
Yeah, you could recreate it, make it basically a clone of the item itself, and the system will be like, okay, well, that's a clone. You meant for them to get it again.
Oh.
Yeah, we're really getting into the weeds of the nuts and bolts of what happens. And in one sense, that's very pedantic and academic and maybe not worth it. But in the other sense, it hopefully is very illustrative of what's going on under the hood, so that you develop that intuition of how it works. And so you don't get burned if you're going to play with the fire called, well, I'm going to modify the course timeline as I go while people are in it. I think that's a powerful strategy to actually do a little bit of that, make it up as you go, or tailor it and make changes as you go, especially with the first pass or two with yourself. Put yourself in as a client in your own courses. It's a wonderful idea to experience it and then see, like, is the language right? Is the pacing feel good? If you put yourself in the course to do it 2 or 3 days ahead of your participants, it's a wonderful way to sort of kick the tires. But also with real people, as they go through it, people who are not you will give you their earnest feedback, hopefully you've got that rapport with them, and you can make tweaks as you go so that the course will be all the better for people who will be going into it in the future. Speaking of, again, such controls, let's look at a little more of these options for managing. You can customize a course. You can basically spin off a version of the course and then have a separate timeline that is an identical clone of the original, but then you can change it for a given participant, and only they will see those changes. And everyone else will still get the standard one, both current participants and future ones. This allows you to basically make a duplicate of the course so that you can tweak it for a person. And then finally, stopping the course progression entirely. You can, again, have the option of keeping at whatever happens so far, sure, keep it there. Or you can do a total purge, like let's just clear it out and all that. Deleting all the course items from the participation so far can be a great thing when you're doing this with your freebie tester client, so that, again, you can play with the stuff that you make and see how it feels, and then clean up the mess really quickly, if you want to take it another try without a lot of accumulated stuff coming in your account. Another thing that I'll say for that self-testing, it's really great to use these fast forward and rewind controls to try it for yourself. If you've got a week-long course and you want to experience the whole thing in a day, well, just put yourself in day 1, do what there is to do, and then fast forward yourself a day, and then log back in as client and experience that. That allows you to very quickly, again, get that feeling for, does this feel right? Does the pacing look good? Does the language natural and flowing? They're the interactive bits where I mark one complete done, and then I get the message of the next thing, and then I do that, and then I get the message. Are those sequences nice? Playing around with your own demo client is a great way to do this. So that's a lot of the long and short of managing participations. Any questions on those controls, those ability to edit and modify what a client is going through or a group?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So when you make spin-offs for clients, if you modify the standard course, will it change it for the client that's with the spin-off?
Excellent question. Nope, not at all. They become completely independent things.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You bet. All right, what should I go to now? Here's a good example that's actually comes preloaded in your account of the onboarding sequence. Speaking of those sequences of stepwise progressions, here's one where, again, I hope it's okay with you guys that I skip over the actual building of stuff, because I don't know you guys want to watch me type too much, but I can sort of talk you through to help you better understand the intuition behind how something is developed. So we've got a using onboarding sequence, and this can be a nice one. Again, it's preloaded in your account. You might tweak it to your own verbiage, your own language, and put in what's here important and skip out what is. But we can see here that, first thing in the day, basically, an action item comes in, and that's a nice little thing. And then when they mark it complete, again, this daisy chaining effect called a message comes right on. And it's a nice little way to put something. I want to take a time from this to make a good point about notifications. When someone is in app, i.e. they're logged in and doing stuff, and the system prescribes like, well, let's send them an email message. Well, they're already logged in. Wouldn't it be lovely if the message just pops right up to them right there, so that it's not like okay, I marked this complete, guess I'll get on with my day, and maybe immediately or 10 minutes later or 2 hours later, I'll check my email and see the follow-up message right away. Messages like this, these notification messages, will be rerouted to not be sent via email, but instead appear right here within the app itself. There are times when you can predict that this will happen and times when you can't. An action item can be marked complete via email. Cool, you mark it complete via email, you're gonna get the email because you're not in app right now, and you'll get this message there. But if you're logged in as you and go to your actions tab as a client and click done, mark it complete, the system knows, hey, you're right here, let me give you this message right here. So don't get confused or disappointed when someone didn't get an email because they got it right here. And if you really want it to be part of the message, or part of the record, so that that in-app message, when it disappears, it's not gone forever. You can again do this thing of add the message to the stream in addition to sending via email. Here again was that little gotcha, sending an email or showing in-app. Actions, it could go either way because you can mark them complete, either logged in or not, but worksheets are always in-app. So for here, we've got this nice little sequence where you've got a video to watch and then a worksheet that comes right on. And this is also, you always know they're going to be in-app because it's an embedded media. So they watch it and then they close it out and they say, hey, we've got a new worksheet item that says this. That's what it says. And then you can get the worksheet and do that. And then again, a daisy chain sequence where they finish that and then the next item comes, an action item, telling them to schedule an appointment. And again, because it was a worksheet, you know that this message will come right into their app as they're interacting with the system. So there's this sort of stepwise wizard that you can bring people through a flow of learning and doing and marking things complete and reflecting, all controlled as sort of one interactive experience. And then of course we've got some other things that are just kind of sprinkled about.
Hi John, this is Shirombo. I see that you use action items to prompt them to schedule an appointment, and this is something that I came across when building my courses. And I thought, is there any chance that we could get like an extra building block that brings them right to the appointment section? Because now it's like I book an appointment as a client, I book an appointment, and then I go to the action item, and then I mark it complete. But when somebody books an appointment, I get a notification anyway. So I think I don't know. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, this is one of those little technical things because yeah, there's that duplication there. It uses less of the functionality, but I think it'd actually be pretty robust to, instead of an action item, just have a message that says, hey, great, please schedule an appointment now. The reason this demo course has this is like, it's kind of cool to, again, get them practiced at marking something complete and having a thing. But you're right, you as receiving coach, it's kind of redundant. So-and-so schedule with you, and so-and-so marked complete the action to schedule with you. I get it. So this might not be an action item at all, but just a little message that says, hey, client name, nice work. Please go over to the overview tab and click plus appointment to book with me, and then I'll talk to you whenever you book me for. Thanks. Yeah. You're taking away a little of the interactivity, a little of the practice of, that satisfaction of playing with the system, but it streamlines it a little bit as well.
So this serves the purpose for an onboarding to get them playing around with action items and get a little bit of the hang of how it functions, right?
That's the intention, yeah. And like I said at the opening of this course, this particular one, this comes preloaded. By all means, tune it to your style and your preferences.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. All right. This is great. I'm running out of sample courses. Here's another fun one. Just again, this is an example course of a module where, like I was mentioning earlier, you can have a course that's not really a full-blown course, but maybe it's a little off-the-shelf sort of thing. Like, hey, I'm working with you in your career, and maybe the imposter syndrome would resonate with you. I'd like you to do this little exercise, and you can design this little exercise. Again, imposter syndrome is not necessarily your coaching style, but whatever sort of like little nugget of lessons that you could sort of make. So this one is a unit-based course where it's all meant to be a nice, tidy exercise that someone can do, again, in stepwise fashion. A message comes out, prompts them to log right in, which takes them right into the system. When they do, I've carefully crafted this language to make it clear, like, hey, hop in and go here, and then a worksheet will be waiting for them. And when they complete the worksheet, that's all the completable items in Unit 1, so they'll jump to Unit 2. Unit 2 means they're going to get an action item and a message. So the message comes and says, hey, good job on that review. I'm referring to this little worksheet. And then a link to an article, hey, read this and mark it done when you're done. And then when they mark this done, that's all the completable stuff. That means they're ready to move on to Unit 3. And then I can send them, again, this stepwise progression that I've just kind of made up yesterday. Here's a worksheet item to think about. And now when you mark that complete, Unit 4, you're on Unit 4. Here's an action item. Again, I give a little bit of context behind the item. Tee up an assignment when they mark that complete. Unit 5 is just one little final message. And that's your little quick self-guided, self-paced experience of doing a little exercise. And that's a module. And again, even if you're not into the business of doing coaching courses, you might offer coaching modules, which again, you can kind of prescribe as in response to like, hey, based on what we talked about today, I think you might find this exercise handy. And the work you do in that exercise will be a wonderful starting point for our conversation during our next session. And that's it. That's any other questions about these things that I've talked about so far? All right, one last one. This is kind of a cool one that you might enjoy. It's another example of that idea of a metric being part of a course and then a regular worksheet that pipes into that metric. And I think as coaches, you might not have this be its own separate standalone worksheet, but you might weave it into another check-in worksheet that you have as standard. It's really nice for you guys as coaches to let your clients weigh in, like, how satisfied are you with the program? Are you getting what you came for? And say anything about that. So I made a little quick worksheet that is a quick question, how satisfied, a little drop-down menu, add comments, and that's it. And this has the effect of piping into a metric that's on a 5-point scale. And we consider 3.5 the dividing line between good and evil. A 4 and 5, okay, we're in the green. 3, 4, 3, 2, or 1, we're in the red. And it's just a nice little touch point to invite your clients to give that earnest feedback in a sort of non-threatening way. It's not personally telling to your face, but they're just, you know, just a little check-in. And that can, again, be great fodder for conversations. And so what I did here was make this metric. I made this worksheet. I cloned it on down the line for every week. And per what Jerry and I were talking about earlier, you know, you can have this be a ritual that's meant to start on whatever, that's meant to occur as a feedback thing on a weekly basis on whatever day of the week you like. It depends on whatever day you schedule someone to begin their course. And that's it. Let's see, I want to talk about one last thing, which is when you make worksheets in courses, you've got basically the option to have this be a freestyle item, or it can be linked to the worksheet template. And this first item is often a very good idea because it allows you to basically say, like, this is my check-in thing. It's my standard check-in thing. If I modify it back in my library, I want those modifications to be in effect everywhere else that I use this thing. So it's a linked to resource. If you go to your library and delete that worksheet template, any usage of it in a course will automatically turn into a freestyle one, so that it's no longer has that original tie to the now deleted template, but then it's really modified. There's another idea of linked to resources in courses, and that is files. When we add files as to a course, as in, here we go, on day 8, week 2 of the program, I want this video to be shared with people. If I were to delete that video from my library, it would magically disappear everywhere throughout the system. It would be unshared from all clients. It would be deleted as course items from all courses that reference that linked to resource. So again, you've got two flavors of resources that you sort of set up in your library, but you use and employ in the context of a course. And that dependency, that link back means that there's some cool things. If you edit one, it edits the other. If you delete one, it has different effects back in the course line. So we got into it. In summary, there's just sort of a couple key ideas that I want to represent. Courses is a great name, and courses is a terrible name. It's the best one I could think of, but as hopefully you guys have a good understanding of now, courses doesn't really do justice to the sort of versatility and wider range of flexibility that in which you can use this as, you know, to automate drudgery and that sort of. As a general guiding rule, just want to think to yourself, like, this is your way to automate away drudgery. So this is something that you're doing a lot and it's sort of a slog. Courses might be a good way to take that off. And it's also a way to codify my best. That's what I meant when I said, you know, there may be something that you lovingly craft as a sequence of materials and assignments, and you do it once for someone because it's just what they need, and you realize, like, hey, this is actually pretty great. I could reuse this and repurpose this and put a little more love and polish and intentionality to the messaging and all that, and make this a sequence that I can use again and again with future clients. And then I hope you guys will agree that with the right mental models, that right understanding of what's happening under the hood and how the map is not the terrain and so forth, that it's not so tricky and that it makes sense of how to put participants in it, have things line up on the dates, fast forward and rewind with confidence, knowing that things will happen pretty much as you expect when you use it from that understanding. That's all we got today. I hope this is useful for you guys to do better coaching and give your clients even more. Thanks so much for watching.